Welcome in, everybody. So good to see you. Um, I'm down in Langley. I'm probably closer to many of you guys. My husband and I are on a quick little getaway. So I'm in an Airbnb here. So it's so beautiful. It's been such gorgeous weather here. I want to spend this meeting today taking a little bit of what might be considered a unique approach to mindfulness because I want to talk about storytelling. And as a teacher myself, I often say that my particular brand of teaching is a marriage of storytelling and some sort of sequencing. And I find so much power in stories. And so I want to kind of take this, I'm going to do two things first, and then we're going to loop it together with mindfulness. And so the first one is I want us to just acknowledge for a moment that each one of us has come here today. We've arrived at this point in our lives because we've had a certain storyline that we followed in our life. And for some of us, there have been chapters of that story that have been tragic, that have been very heavy, that have maybe been filled with grief or loss or sadness. And then there have been chapters that are filled with joy and anticipation and happiness. And but I think particularly in the Western culture, we've been very trained to familiarize ourselves and find a lot of comfort with the very particular kind of story, which is the one that's all wrapped up with a pretty bow at the end and has a happily ever after at the end of it. And I think of this because I watch a lot of foreign movies and foreign films, and I realize that in the West, we have a very low threshold for withstanding discomfort and things that maybe don't end as happily. And so I think I just want to let's hold that in a container, this idea that we all have a story to tell, we all have our own individual story, and we tend to find comfort more with those stories that are the happily ever after. So we've got that in kind of one container here. On the other side, in this different container, I want to say how the brain itself is a narrator, is a storyteller. And what I think what often happens when I've experienced this before I had my mindfulness practice is I didn't realize that my brain was a storyteller, that my brain was a narrator. And what I thought is I thought that I was the story that my brain was telling me, no matter what it was. I was very attached to that story.
I lost Jyoti.
Yeah, Jyoti, you're on mute.
Yeah,
that was so odd. I didn't touch anything. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So the brain is a storyteller, and it often likes to tell us false stories, false narratives. Things like, I can't do this. Things like, oh, they're going to find out that I'm not actually smart enough to be in this room. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Things like, I'm not good enough. These are all stories that sometimes pop into our minds that we adapt, we follow them without questioning because we just believe whatever story the mind starts to tell. So what I would like us to do today, and what I've really, what has empowered me most through my mindfulness practice, is what the mindfulness practice does is it allows us to move out of the actor's role in whatever story is being told and more into the director's role. Because through mindfulness, what we're able to do is take 2 to 3 steps back where we're no longer in the scene. We can actually observe what is happening with a sense of non-attachment, with a sense of pure observations without needing to judge it as good or bad or right or wrong, but simply observationally viewing what is there. And then from that place of observation, we can say, I'm not actually sure that that story that my brain's been telling me for the past 10 years is really true, but I've been buying into it for all these years. But we can't get to that place of discernment until we've backed away, which is what mindfulness gives us. So what I would love to do, with your permission, is to move into a short 3 to 4 minute practice where we start to shift into looking at the stories that our mind tells us and dropping into that sense of mindfulness. So if you're not already, if you could just find a comfortable seat. And then maybe just take a breath, maybe take a full breath in. You can think of your body like a beautiful vase, fill that vase full of air. Maybe hold it at the top, just filling yourself full of that new breath. And then when the body tells you to, start to slowly release the breath. And you just ride that exhale the way you would sort of ride a wave. Let's do that one more time. Just inhale fully, filling the body from bottom to top with new breath. Pause for a moment to experience that fullness. And as the body tells you it's time, begin to slowly and easefully release the breath. And as you begin to drop into a comfortable space with the body, you notice the breath is just easefully moving in and out. See if you can just begin to sense your sense of sight. And maybe even become aware of any imagery, any colors, any pictures that are rising up into your mind. Almost as if your mind was a screen and there was some sort of like movie playing on the screen. And just start to notice, like, what is the tone of the imagery that comes up? And even if they aren't sharp images, maybe it's just there's a sense that there's a certain feeling there. There's a particular color or sets of colors. There's an emotion that is accompanying whatever visual is on the mind screen. And recognizing that this is part of your story. This is the story that the mind often shares with you. And then you might start to think to yourself, what are certain narratives that show up in your mind on a repetitive basis? Maybe it's a narrative around, I know who I am and I'm enough. Maybe it's a narrative around, I don't know if I can do this, or this is really hard right now. Maybe it's a narrative around, this is uncomfortable. And just see if you can allow yourself to notice all of the different storylines that are running, sometimes parallel, but sometimes they intersect each other in the mind. And see if by observing these different stories, you can start to notice through the distance that you've introduced that maybe some of those stories are false stories. They're not actually true for you anymore. But the brain has said them so often to you that you've attached to them without questioning them. But now you have this new spaciousness. And so you might just, with a sense of curiosity, just, that's interesting that the brain is telling me that old story again. But I know that's not true anymore. Or maybe the brain is telling you a true story, one about your worth, your value, your beauty. And you might thank the mind for showing you that true narrative that you often forget about yourself. Taking about 10 more seconds here as we start to get a little bit more comfortable just being in relationship with ourselves. Sharing a sort of companionable silence just with ourselves and this community on the screen. And then as we start to close this practice, I would invite you, as you inhale, maybe saying to yourself silently, I know who I am. And as you exhale, and I am enough. Inhaling, I know who I am. And exhaling, and I am enough. And last time, inhaling, I know who I am. And exhaling, and I am more than enough. And as you take in your next breath, you might find that as an invitation to blink the eyes open if they were closed. So I think for me, this has been a really powerful practice of being able to recognize the mind as a storyteller and starting to differentiate between the kinds of stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes we just need a reminder that we do know who we are at our core. We really do. And we are all enough in our own unique and special ways. So that's the offering today. And I would love to invite you to unmute if you'd like to share any portion of your experience, either today or over the past several weeks. Anything that came up for you during this short 15 minutes we shared together.
I've just been glad we're doing this. It's kind of hard to set aside daily practice when you're doing it by yourself, although I have a little bit, but when you're doing it as a group, it's kind of locks you into it. It's been good.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for that share. Anybody see any colors? I always find that interesting. Sometimes a certain color pops up.
Mine's generally blue.
It's beautiful. Blue tends to be a very calm energy kind of color. So it's nice to know that you have that in your mind for you to visit at any time.
Sometimes it's hard to find in the middle of the night though.
I hear that. I hear that.
Demons are the biggest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. In the email that you all will get on Friday, the practice that I'm going to share with Gretchen is a tandem practice to what we did today. So it's an audio meditation that uses this similar mantra that I know who I am and I am enough, and it approaches it from a place of self-compassion and self-acceptance. So I see this as a companion practice, and that will be attached in Friday's email. So, yeah.
Anyone
This
else?
is, yeah. I was going to say, this is something too you can use with people in your life. I know with my spouse, sometimes there will be something that happens and I'll look at him and I'll tell him, just so you know, the story I'm telling myself right now is X, Y, or Z. And I know it's not true, but I'm letting you know that this is the story that's in my head right now. And that often invites people into whatever experience you're having, and it can open up a space for better communication. Brene Brown uses this tool a lot as well.
Yeah, I noticed two narratives. One was prevailing, which was good, which is you got this, you're gonna crush it, like basically, like you can do whatever you want to do. And that was the prevailing one, but there was another one too that was like, oh, you're tired, like, you're just gonna be sluggish. So it was kind of interesting to see both of them and have one be prevailing, which is good. So focus on that one.
Well, and the recognition that you get to choose the story that you focus on. That's incredibly empowering.
And that's our Cy Fisher, who has a new infant as well at home. So perhaps, perhaps those two dialogues are a spot on, Cy.
It's which story are you going to feed?
Exactly. Yes. There's an old adage, I think that it's like, you know, like they're all seeds and some are weeds and some are flowers. It's just which ones you water.
Wow. Isn't that cool?
Mm.
Paula, how do you like this? Jody, how do you like this?
Okay, quite well. And this is only my second opportunity to listen to you, but it was very informative and I appreciate it very much. I was able to use a couple of the skills that you taught the last time, believe it or not, when I was sitting on the ferry and I was feeling a little anxious going to the other side. And that was just from my very first opportunity with you. So funny how it pops into your head when you least expect it. So thank you for that. It's been helpful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Mm.
All right, my friends. I know that we're all going to get back to work, and but Studio B, you have the links to it, and there's more coming, and this is not going away. Peggy, do you have any thoughts?
I was just thinking, and you brought it up about what I call the imposter syndrome, where we just get this in our heads that, so, you know, we're faking it, we're not good, not living up to the responsibilities that we have, and that we're going to get caught at some point, you know, and that's something that rolls around in my head and had been for many years when I was in the corporate world with a lot of responsibility. And I just, you know, it was a ever winding reel that went through my head, and I had to kind of learn how to squash that. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Very good. Very, very good.
I might attach it as well. I'll talk with Gretchen and see if she thinks it's a good idea. There's a TED Talk, and some of you might be familiar with it. It's only 15 minutes by Amy Cuddy, called Fake It Till You Make It. And she talks about power posing, but she puts it in the languaging of businesses a lot. But one of the things at the end that she talks about, it's not just about faking it till you make it, it's faking it till you become it. Because you reach a point where you realize you're no longer faking it. You actually, through the process of faking it, became this thing you were faking all along. It's a really powerful TED Talk. So that we might include that as well, just as a follow-up too. You could bring that in any meeting or stuff that you guys do. It's super cool.
Jyoti, I just want to highlight one thing, because in the email too that you're going to be sending out, I think some of the practices are about creating a sustainable practice, right? And so just to support that, because Cy, I heard that you had an infant, and I'm in the infant world right now too, just had a baby. And sometimes, to Peggy's point, I'm trying to, you know, be a meditator, right? And then I feel like maybe I'm not. And it's like, okay, so what is that? It doesn't have to look or feel like anything. And the practice doesn't have to necessarily be set aside. It can, but if that's not the energy at the moment, so then what are you doing right now that you can be in touch with? You could feel the weight of your seat in your chair, or your feet touching the ground, or as you walk to get your coffee, or feel your hands on the keys of your keyboard as you type an email. All of this is practice. And so this is, I think, at least for me anyway, a beginning of starting to create a sustainable friendship, if you will, with mindfulness practice. And Jyoti, I don't know if you want to say anything more to that, but I know that that's going to be some of what you're going to share towards, you know, closing these 4 weeks anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And about how do we kind of take it out of the container of this is my mindfulness practice and start to sprinkle it so that it's just a part of the daily life. You know, one of my favorite meditation practices, quite frankly, is mindfully washing the dishes. And I don't like anyone else in my family to do it. I really like mindfully washing the dishes. It's a practice. You know,
Kinda
mindfully
like
when
bhakti
your
yoga.
children. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yes, that will be part of the follow-up. Thank you for that, Jessica, very much.
All right.
Well,
Gretchen?
Thank you, everyone. And we'll stay on till 1:30 if anybody wants to hang out and has any specific questions we could answer.
Thanks, everyone.